Hello everyone. Tonight we will step into a stifling, ancient world filled with whispers no one dares to name, ancient Egypt, where death is never the end. Forget the glittering pyramids and the neatly wrapped mummies in museums. The truth lies deep beneath the earth, where tomb workers are never the same again. And if you think you're brave enough to hold a lamp and walk through a stone corridor where your shadow no longer follows you, remember there are doors once opened that you can never return from. Before you lean back comfortably, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely enjoy the content I share, and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's fascinating to see people following from all over the world. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some ambient noise, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. Welcome to the land of sand and mummies. No birds chirping, no gentle sunlight streaming through windows, no sweet breakfast waiting on a wooden table, scented with cinnamon. Instead, there's a fine layer of ash-like dust clinging to your hair, mouth, eyes, and parts of your body you haven't even noticed yet. You wake up in a makeshift canvas tent on the edge of the Valley of the Kings, where everything is cracked, parched, and smells of embalmed sweat. The good news, you're still breathing. The bad news, last night you swallowed at least 3 sandflies and some free-floating camel hair in the hot wind. The mat you lie on, woven from rough linen, once soaked in fragrant oils for the god Osiris, now soaks up your sweat. It's stiff as sun-baked leather, curling at the edges from the scorching sand. Every time you shift, it sounds like tearing papyrus, and your back skin has officially entered snake armor mode. Water, forget it. The only water barrel was chewed through by desert rats last night. You can smell the leaked water, mixed with the urine of masons, who thought the barrel was a quick dump. No matter, you'll get used to thirst. Everyone here is thirsty. Thirsty for water. Thirsty for shade. Thirsty for a day when their hands aren't stained with mummy resin, and their minds aren't weighed down by curses. You sit up, or rather, you try to bend your body amid the sound of your spine creaking like a collapsing rock wall. Your body feels pieced together from fragments, knees stiff, neck unable to turn past 15 degrees, back glued to the mat by a layer of sweat dried 2 days ago. You reach for your shoes, simple leather sandals warped from being half buried in hot sand. As you slip your foot in, a sharp pain shoots up, a thorn or maybe a small scorpion's corpse. You don't dare check. If it doesn't sting again, you'll call it lucky. When you step out of the tent, the world is a giant furnace. The sun hasn't fully risen, but you already feel pressed between 2 slabs of stone. The air carries the smell of burning wood, hot sand, and in the distance, the sweet, suffocating aroma of resin boiling in the embalming pits, like lotus flowers mixed with old blood. The labor camp begins to stir. The person in the tent to your left is coughing up phlegm as if trying to expel their guts. The one to your right is arguing with a cockroach. No joke, the roaches here are the size of your palm and know how to crawl into shoes. You learned that the hard way. Breakfast, sure, if you like week-old dry bread, lumpy porridge made from moldy barley, and a bit of watery beer, not for getting drunk, but because the clean water has been laced with arsenic powder for 3 months. Rumor has it, the tomb overseer adds arsenic to prevent disease. Good news, you're not dead yet. Bad news, you forgot what feeling healthy was like by the 2nd week here. You walk toward the main tomb, your 43rd consecutive shift without a break. You wonder what task you'll get today, cleaning bat droppings off an Anubis statue, carrying the body of a young girl who died from incense suffocation, or tidying a room with 48 leaking organ jars due to cracked plaster. You hear a bell ring from the watchtower, not to mark the hour, but to count who didn't walk out of the tomb from yesterday. A strange emptiness settles in you. You're no longer surprised, no longer afraid, just accustomed, as if you've lived here before, as if this is your 3rd cycle of life, and you've already wiped that wall clean in the year of Ramses II of Merneptah, and maybe the year you'll be buried under this very tomb. You reach the gate, sand creeps into your shoes, the wind carries nameless whispers, the stone gate opens, heavy as the entrance to the underworld. You step in, another day, another century, another life, and you know, until you die, you'll never be clean again. You think you'll get used to the smell, that sweet but acrid scent, like burning resin. The smell of cedar oil, mixed with goose fat, tree sap, beeswax, natron salt, dried blood, and something else no one dares name. You've tried washing your shirt, 3 times with rainwater pooled in cracked stone, once with watery beer, once with water from a broken ceremonial jar, water with a yellow film, and some dead thing in it. None of it worked. The smell clings to the fabric like the god Seth clings to vengeance. It's not just a smell, it's an entity. It slithers into every fiber, every fold, and then into your skin. You scratch your neck. Your hand comes away with a faint brownish yellow stain. Resin or corpse grease, maybe both. Every day you enter the embalming chamber. You lose another layer of humanity. Yesterday, you retched seeing intestines pulled out like a skinned eel. Today, you wipe blood from a cracked organ jar without blinking. You even jot a note to remind the maintenance crew to patch the plaster. You don't feel anything anymore, just stickiness. Stickiness everywhere, and the smell never leaves. The high priest says the smell is sacred, a divine aroma for Osiris, for the souls journeying to the Joat, the afterlife. But to you, it's a nameless curse. Every time you return to your tent, your co-workers part like you carry the plague. One joked you could be bait for stray spirits. Just stand still in a tomb and spread your arms. No one laughed after that, because it made sense. Too much sense. This morning, you're ordered to the 3rd chamber, where unfinished coffins lie, mummies left incomplete, some not yet coated in final resin. You step into the room, oil lamp flickering, and the smell hits you like a snake coiling around your neck. Sometimes you stop breathing, because your lungs fear taking in more. You wrap a cloth over your nose, but the smell seeps through every layer. It clings to your teeth, your tongue, and stays. A female corpse. Incomplete. Her side still exposes white bone, scraped clean, her teeth bared, like a smile. You bend to clean under the coffin, and accidentally bump into a puddle of human fat on the stone floor. You slip, fall, and your back slams into the lid of a second coffin. It shakes, not much, but clearly, you say nothing. Just wipe the blood, yours or someone else's, and keep going. Your eyes no longer tremble, but your hands stay cold. Afternoon, you return to camp to change your shirt. Not because of the smell, because it's stained with something furry, a piece of organ, a scrap of unburnt sacrificial cat. You don't know, you don't want to know. You grab your other shirt, the only one left, and realize it smells too, even though you haven't worn it all week, even though you hung it in the desert sun, even though you sprinkled incense dust on it. Useless. The smell doesn't come from the shirt. It comes from you. A guard says, your skin's starting to look like the corpses we pull from the river. You smirk but don't reply, because you know he's not joking. At night, you don't eat. Everything smells. Even the barley porridge carries a hint of burnt beeswax. You take a sip of beer and feel like you're swallowing resin. You vomit. Nothing comes up, because you haven't eaten since morning. Just yellow, smelling like a corpse. You wipe your mouth, lie down, stare at the tent ceiling, but you can't sleep, because your hands are still sticky. The slick feeling lingers on your left wrist, where you once carried a child's corpse not yet fully embalmed. The smell doesn't leave. The smell lives with you. Every night you lie down, the smell whispers in your ear, not in words, in sensations. And you know, no matter how you escape, wash, leave this place, change camps, change jobs, you'll carry it with you. It'll stay in your hair, your nails, every dream you think is peaceful. Because once you've worked in the tombs, the smell of death never gives you back to yourself. And that's why you'll never truly be clean. Never. You once thought working in the royal tombs was a kind of honor. At least, that's what the recruiter shouted in your face as you stood naked in the courtyard, having your teeth, hands, and number of toes inspected. You will serve eternally, he said, for those who will live forever. That day, naive, you asked, what about me? He didn't answer, but now you know, the buried get their names recorded. The diggers get forgotten. Every day, stepping into the stone depths beneath Thebes, you're reminded you're nothing but an arm in a sacred machine. A machine lubricated by sweat, blood, and the red mud left after scrubbing the organ room's floor. The task system is clear and brutal. Some are chosen to carve stone, spending their lives in dark niches, chiseling gods without ever seeing sunlight. Some mix embalming fluids, a liquid hot as oil that can peel skin after 3 touches. You're in corpse transport. Your job is to carry, scrape ash, wipe wax, lower bodies into tombs, lift coffins, keep heads from falling off when the ropes snap. You know who died when, how, and at what depth they're buried. You know some are buried with 19 jars of gold, others with just a cloth under their back, usually young priests, dead from incense poisoning. You also know not everyone is buried to rest. Some are dug up again, for divine reasons. Really, it's because the next pharaoh hated them. You were once ordered to unearth a 50-year-old finished mummy, drag it to the tomb courtyard, unwrap its linen, remove the amulet from its wrist, and toss the rest to desert dogs. You did it at night, no lamp, no words, because when a mummy is cast out from the afterlife, it doesn't die, it returns. The next day, you vomited. You dreamed you were wrapped in the same linen from yesterday. You woke up in urine and nosebleeds, but didn't dare tell anyone. In the tombs, there's something called the right to live after death. It's for the buried. They get their names carved. They get busts. They get chants. They get servants buried with them. You're tasked with cleaning those statues, polishing until you see your reflection in Rana's eyes, and knowing if you die here, no one will bury you. Once, you carried a young queen's body. Her coffin was ebony inlaid with ivory, scented with gentle incense like tears. But as you leaned to check the amulet on her chest, you saw a small red ink inscription. This is the second body. What did it mean? It meant someone else was buried under her name, to mislead tomb robbers. You turned. In the room's corner, another coffin. No name, no drawings, sealed with tree sap, the lid slightly cracked. You swear you heard sobbing from inside, but no one else stopped. Every corpse transfer goes through 3 checks: wrapped, blessed, and no extras included. Extras could be maids, singers, guards, or anyone unlucky enough to touch what they shouldn't. A man in your group, Chijari, once accidentally kicked a small bronze god statue. That night, he was taken away. No explanation. A week later, you carried a mummy, small, light, soft-jointed, wrapped in old linen. As torchlight passed over its shriveled face, you recognized Chijari's front teeth, gapped from sleep. You didn't ask. You no longer had the capacity for panic, because here, people live to bury others. Then, in turn, they're buried by someone whose name also won't be recorded. In the 8th chamber, you saw writing on the wall, "Do not let your hand touch my blood, lest you replace me in the dark." You laughed. But that night, cleaning the flesh-scraping tools, you noticed a cut on your finger, not deep, but bleeding, soaking into linen, near an unfinished corpse. You hid it. But since then, you've heard voices calling you by a name you don't use. A name not from this life. And now you're not sure who's being buried, and who's digging. Because here, that boundary is the first thing buried. Your overseer, Menka, believes in curses more than wages, health, or reason. He's the first at the tomb and the last to leave, not out of diligence, but because he fears if he doesn't salute the Anubis statue 3 times, his chest will be torn open in his sleep by the death god's claws. Every morning, you see him circle coffins, clutching a salt pouch, sprinkling pinches in every corner, muttering in a tongue no one recognizes, maybe ancient Demotic, maybe just the grinding teeth of a man sleepless for 10 years. Menka doesn't trust royal protocols, mummy inspections, or antiseptics, but he believes if someone whistles near a coffin, the dead soul will follow the sound and slip into the whistler's heart. A rookie, unaware of the rule, tried it. He whistled out of boredom while cleaning a liver jar. 2 days later, he fell into a vat of boiling incense oil, slipped, per the official report. Menka only said, "The gods don't like being mocked." No one argued. Menka has a handwritten list of don'ts posted on the tomb door. Some make sense. Don't touch corpses barehanded. Don't eat near the ritual area. Others are harder to explain. Don't wear mismatched shoes. Don't sing. Morning light. Don't let your shadow fall on a coffin lid at noon. You once asked why. Menka just stared, his eyes like a stone wall that's seen too much. "I saw a man drained of blood through his nose, after standing in the wrong spot," he said, then turned away. "Since then, you step around everything. always mindful of your shadow's fall. Menka doesn't smile, never has. Rumor says he once embalmed Queen Nefertari and saw her eyes open during the final wrapping. Some say he's haunted, but survives because he knows how to speak to spirits. Survives, but doesn't live. He doesn't sleep in a tent. He sleeps in an abandoned shrine, next to a lion-headed statue no one dares approach. You once peeked inside. He lay on the stone floor, eyes open, clutching a broken-armed god statue. You're not sure he's still human, but no one fires him. No one dares. Once, royal guards came to inspect. They ordered the corpse room cleared. Menka objected. He said, moving coffins in the wrong order would unleash the curse of the sleeping master, releasing flesh-eating beetles that could crawl into a living heart. The guards laughed. They did it their way. 3 days later, the team broke out in red rashes like fire, then fevers, then vomited, something like dirt and human hair. No one brought it up again. Menka didn't say, "I told you so," or smile. He just wiped the wall where the coffins had been moved. You once thought Menka was an eccentric, superstitious old man, but then you saw cracks in the stone, hairline fractures, stretching from buried pharaohs' names to coffin edges. You saw a mummy leaking honey from its mouth, though no one embalms mouths with honey. Saw a Horus statue gleaming as if freshly oiled, though no one entered that chamber all week. And you started sprinkling salt, like Menka, at first for peace of mind, then, to survive. You saw him tie red thread around his wrist before entering a room with a cat statue. You tied one too. You heard him breathe evenly, 3 breaths, then pause when passing the altar. You mimicked it. You no longer think he's eccentric. You see him as the only map to surviving the night in this world. Once, you spilled incense oil on a Sobek statue's foot. Menka heard, rushed over, like a man possessed. He didn't scold you, just stared, then took a knife, cut a small line on your hand, and dripped blood on the statue's nose. "A trade," he whispered. You didn't understand. But that night, as you slept, you heard something slither under your mat. Not a snake, not a rat, just a cold current crawling up your spine. And you dreamed you were lying in a coffin, Menka sealing the lid. He looked at you, still not smiling. But for the first time, you heard his voice in your head. "If you want to live long here, don't trust stone walls, don't trust the sun, don't trust the living, only trust the curse." And you knew he wasn't joking. Menka never jokes. Here, joking is the first thing killed. That day, your task was simple. Enter the name carving room to retrieve a bronze axe, forgotten from the previous shift. A routine job, not dangerous, not memorable, just an axe. But as you crossed the narrow threshold of Chamber 9, where stone slabs hold pharaohs' names carved onto coffin lids, the air felt thicker, not from heat, from an unnatural silence, as if everything was holding its breath, waiting for you to err. You didn't think much of it. You stepped to the room's center, touched the axe handle, polished enough to reflect part of your face, and at that moment, you heard a hiss, short, dry, fast as a blade slicing cloth. You didn't turn, because a snake had coiled around your wrist like a living rope. Its skin was cold, damp, slick but strong, born of darkness. You didn't scream, not from bravery, but because your throat locked. Your other hand froze on the axe handle. Your eyes didn't dare blink. For a moment, time stood still, just you and the creature tightening around your wrist's pulse. Its eyes were black as ink, not aggressive, not afraid, just watching you like preordained prey. Then, from the room's corner, movement. A shadow fell from a statue, Horus, falcon-headed, holding a scepter, standing motionless for generations. Just a statue, right? But this time, you knew it was watching, not an "I'm imagining it" gaze. A real, conscious, measuring gaze with memory. The statue's shadow stretched longer than normal. It covered the snake, and the snake stopped tightening. In a strange moment, all three, you, the snake, and Horus, aligned perfectly. No one moved, no one breathed. Then the snake slowly slithered down, not fast, not panicked. It crawled along your leg, slipped into a stone crevice, and vanished, as if it never existed. You collapsed, still clutching the axe, heart pounding like it would break your ribs. Sweat soaked your back, but the room stayed cold, Cold like graveyard stone, like air drained by something outside life's rules. You turned, looked at the statue, unchanged, still a figure taller than a man, with deep black stone eyes. But this time, you didn't dare meet its gaze, not from fear, from death, as if for a second, you'd been spared, not by the snake, by what stood behind it. You stood, trembling, and left the room. But as you touched the doorframe, your hand stung. You looked down, a thin cut, the length of a pinky, bleeding, not from the snake, from the axe handle. Maybe, but the problem was, the cut matched half an erased Horus eye symbol, a curve rising, then breaking. You washed it. It didn't heal. 3 days later, it was still red, still seeping, still itching when you passed rooms with god statues. Every night, as you lie down, you see that room in your dreams. No snake, no axe, just you and Horus, its eyes wide as the gates of the underworld, staring as if asking, will you keep your word? You don't recall promising anything. You don't know what you said, but you wake with a nosebleed and a drop of resin on your temple. The axe, you still carry it on shifts, but its handle is slowly changing color. No one believes you. One says, you cut your hand and think it's magic. Another sighs, I've seen men bitten by snakes, then start speaking tongues. No one understands, but you say nothing. You just remember those eyes, watching you long, watching like you belonged to it already. Since then, every time you pass a Horus statue, you bow, not for ritual, because you know you're being watched, always. And maybe you're only alive because you've been marked, not as prey, as a keeper of something you don't yet understand. You once believed canopic jars, those stone vessels with lids for holding the liver, lungs, intestines, or heart of the dead, were just that, simple jars, per the priest's texts or the trainer's words during your first dreamy day before you touched a real human liver. But after 25 days working in the underground organ storage, you question everything. Because one jar, number 43 on the third shelf, is unlike any you've held. It's cold, colder than stone. Touching it doesn't feel cool. It feels like your hand is being pulled inside. It's like touching a hibernating animal, not moving, but with a faint reverse warmth, like something smoldering. The jar's lid isn't carved with Horus's suns like others. It's smooth, dull grey, like stone with no origin. When you shook it, something you swear you'd never do if sane, you heard a sound, not liquid, not objects, hitting the sides. A breath, a hiss, something alive. You stopped, stepped back, breathed deep, looked around. No one saw. The room was just you. You bent to wipe the jar's label. No name, no ID number, no record in the storage map, but a scratch, faint but clear, like a hieroglyph, carved, erased, then carved again. You looked closer. It was the second symbol, used for vital power in royal rituals. Problem is, this symbol is only carved on scepters or god statues' chests, never on organ jars. You set the jar down, turned to report to Menka, but when you looked back, the jar was warm, not from your hand. It radiated, not steam, sweat like vapor, like a body heating up. You didn't touch it again. You backed away. But as you turned, you heard something tap the lid, like a hand knocking from inside. 3 beats, short, even, then absolute silence. You don't remember how you got back to camp, only that you woke on your mat, a red mark on your hand, a circle, like the jar's mouth pressed into your skin. Someone in camp said you fainted. Another said you wandered all night around the storage chamber, muttering in a tongue no one knew. You didn't argue. You're not sure you understand. But since then, you've had dreams, not nightmares, memories. You dream your hands dip into thick black liquid. You're placing a liver in a jar, not stone, but flesh, skin, something that stretches, and you seal it with a prayer. When you wake, you're whispering strange syllables, your hand tracing the second symbol in the sand. You searched the storage records, asked the keeper. No one knows about jar 43, no one signed for it, no number logged, but everyone avoids that shelf. One said, I once grabbed it by mistake, dreamed that night my liver was pulled from my chest. Another said, I opened an unmarked jar once. Next morning, 3 teeth fell out. You don't know how much is true, but you know that jar doesn't belong here. It shouldn't be touched, and it definitely shouldn't be active. You tried switching areas, begging to work in stone storage or dust sweeping, but orders keep you in the organ chamber, and jar 43 stays there, sometimes on shelf 3, sometimes in another corner. No one saw it moved, but you know, because every time you enter, it faces you, the lid, with no carving, reflecting your face clearer than any bronze mirror. Then, one sleepless night, you sat outside under the stars. In the night breeze, you heard a tapping, 3 beats, distant, very distant, but clear enough to know something inside hasn't slept. And if you stay here longer, sooner or later, it'll tap right in your chest, from the inside, not to get out, to stay, in the deepest part of the tomb, where no natural light, no wind, no rats, and almost no human sound exists. There is a black stone door, coated in hardened resin, sealed with mortar, mixed with beeswax and goat's blood, and carved with an inscription everyone pretends not to see. He who opens without being named will be swallowed by his own darkness. This door isn't on the tomb's official map. It has no name, no chamber number, and not a single line in the labor logs, but everyone knows it's there. It lies at the end of the final corridor, where you only pass if assigned to dust a forgotten statue or refill the lamp that never goes out, and those who pass turn their heads quickly, not out of fear, but because, if you stare longer than a few seconds, you start to see the carvings on the stone move, not much, just like skin shrinking in cold wind, or the faint twitch of a corpse's muscle after death. Once, you were ordered to clear cobwebs from that corridor's end. You approached slowly, holding a straw broom, sweeping away layers of dust. But a few steps from the door, your broom snapped in half, not from force, but because the bamboo handle rotted in the still air. You stopped, staring at the mortar in the door's cracks. There was a small dent, as if someone had once tried to chisel it. Inside the dent, the mortar was broken, revealing a narrow gap, barely the width of a fingertip, black beyond the reach of torchlight. The air around the gap was unnaturally cold, not stone cold. Cold like something breathing out from the other side, something not air, not soul, not object, but present. You stepped back. From behind, a raspy voice said, "Don't ask." You turned. It was Menka, his eyes bloodshot from sleeplessness, holding a scorched bundle of salt. He didn't look at you, only at the door. Then he nodded to a guard behind him. They brought a linen cloth, draped it over the door, like covering a corpse, burned incense, circled 3 times, and sprinkled metallic-smelling powder into the crack. You weren't allowed to ask, but since then, every time you pass that area, your heart beats faster, not from fear, but because something inside wants to pull you back, as if you've stood before that door before, in another life. You asked an old man in secret. He said, once, a night guard dared knock on the door 3 times. The next morning, his tent held only a neatly folded layer of skin, like a cloak. Another said, that door doesn't open inward, it opens into. You didn't grasp the meaning, but you clearly remember one night, half asleep, hearing knocking. Not close, not clear, but stone, tapping stone, slow, patient, steady. You jolted awake, sweating coldly. The camp was asleep. No one stirred, but your hands somehow were covered in resin dust. You don't know where you went in your dream, but the next morning, returning to that corridor, you saw what shouldn't be. The linen covering the door had fallen, neatly folded on the floor. No one spoke, no one touched it. But from that day, your shifts changed. No more cleaning the final corridor, no tasks near the door. Yet every night, as you lie down, you feel that cold. The cold from the gap no one dares peer through. And you dream of passing through that door, not opening, not pushing, but sliding in, sucked through. In that dream, you're not afraid. You only feel like you've finally come home. But when you wake, your heart is heavy, as if part of you is gone, left behind on the other side of the door that never opens. Or rather, never should open. There's an unwritten rule in the royal tombs, never recorded, never taught, but whispered among all. If you see a mirror's reflection in the tomb, don't look, not from superstition, not from fear of breaking it, but because what's reflected isn't you. At first you thought it was just a scare tactic, like tales of Ra's eye flying at night, or Sekhmet statue walking under a full moon, until you were assigned to clean the dressing room of a young princess who died suddenly, mid-applying blush to her left cheek, and no one dared bury her bronze mirror with her. Oh, the room was small, a low stone bed, a red-painted wooden vanity, and 3 bronze mirrors facing the ceiling, like 3 metal eyes. You entered, sensing a different air, not foul, not rancid, but overly fragrant. The smell of dried lotus, perfumed powder, lipstick, made from crushed beetle shells, no breeze, no flickering lamp. Yet your skin prickled. You approached the first mirror, intending to wipe its dust-covered surface. As you leaned down, you saw yourself. But not truly you. The mirror showed your face, your clothes, your disheveled hair from 6 hours underground. But the eyes didn't match. They squinted slightly, smirking. The mouth curled up, though your lips were pressed tight. You stepped back, heart pounding. You glanced at the second mirror. This time, you saw someone behind you. A white figure, close, hand on your shoulder. You spun around, nothing, but your shoulder felt heavy. No breeze, yet your hair brushed your ear, like someone's breath from behind. You stopped cleaning, you meant to leave, but the third mirror glowed strangely, not like a lamp, but like heated, then cooled metal. It drew you back. You looked in. This time, you didn't see yourself. You saw a woman, long hair, large eyes, sitting at the mirror, finishing her left cheek's blush. She didn't look at you, only at herself. But as you stepped back, she looked up. Her eyes met yours, and you lost all sense of time. No room, just her gaze, piercing your bones like sharp needles. You fell backward, unsure how long you were out. When you woke, the oil lamp was nearly dry. All 3 mirrors were face down on the table, and on your left cheek, where she'd paused her blush, was a faint red swelling, like a slap. You told no one, but since then, you avoid reflective surfaces in the tomb. No gazing into water basins, no glancing at bronze, no touching anything that could show a face, because you know, if you look, you'll see something that doesn't want you to turn away. A week later, a new recruit joined the camp, young, curious, assigned to clean that dressing room. You warned him not to look in the mirrors. He laughed. "I'm handsome," he said. "What's to fear?" The next day, he was gone. No trace, his tent untouched, shoes at the door, but he was gone. On the vanity, a fresh red lipstick mark, still wet. Some blamed tomb robbers. Menka only said, he didn't listen. That night, you dreamed of the third mirror. It opened like a door, and the woman stepped out. No longer young, no longer beautiful, no longer with eyes, but she still looked at you. And this time, you couldn't turn away. You woke drenched in cold sweat, clutching a small warped bronze piece, polished, reflecting your face, smiling, and for a moment, you weren't sure, truly not sure, if the face was still yours. Because if you see a mirror's reflection in the tomb, don't look, not because you'll see yourself, but because you'll see something that wants to be you. There are things you shouldn't hear in a royal tomb, but you heard it, a sentence spoken by a young co-worker while wiping a Hathor statue with an oil-soaked cloth. "I think I'm in love with her mummy." The room fell silent. No one laughed, no one spoke, no one corrected him, because in this place, after enough time among dried blood, sacred resin, and nameless dreams, all boundaries blur. The young man, Nakt, was 3 weeks into the ritual area, face still youthful, teeth still intact, unscratched by the priest's nails when they lose control during embalming. He said that every time he passed Chamber 12, where a nameless princess's mummy, called She Who No Longer Breathes But Still Glows, rested, his heart raced, and the part between his legs reacted in a way he hadn't felt since a priest scolded him for laughing during a cat mummy's prayer. "She looks at me," Nakt said, though her eyes were taken out long ago. "I know she's looking." You didn't know what to say. You didn't know if what stirred in him was madness, desperation, or simply the strange allure of death, wrapped in sacred resin. You'd heard of guards sleeping beside mummies to dream of speaking with the dead. You'd seen an old priest kiss a nun's mummy forehead before sealing the coffin. Not a ritual kiss, but a lover's farewell, but loving a mummy, openly. Nakt was the first. He began spending time cleaning her mummy alone, wiping carefully, using stronger incense, placing extra amulets under her linen. One day, he smiled and said, "I saw her wink. You didn't argue, because the night before, you dreamed you stood in that chamber, watching them, Nakt and the mummy, lying together on a stone bed, like an underworld wedding. You turned away in the dream, but couldn't look away, and when you woke, you found a strip of linen in your hand, coated in the ritual area's distinct fragrant oil. You'd never been there, but the smell lingered, sweet, sharp, and clinging like guilt." A week later, Nakt vanished. No sound, no warning, only his cleaning cloth, and a front tooth remained, neatly placed on the princess's coffin lid. They said he fled. Amenka muttered. He followed the call. You didn't ask further. But since then, on faint moon nights, you see a figure at Chamber 12's door, holding a water basin, wiping dust with slow, tender motions, as if touching living skin. You know it's Nakt, or what's left of him. You tried telling the guards, but they no longer approach that chamber. She doesn't like being disturbed, they said, especially when she's with her lover. Then, the signs began. Beeswax scent spread from the storage area. Withered lotus flowers appeared at Amun's statue's base, though no one brought them. A pristine linen cloth, unstained, lay by the altar, faintly inscribed, "We were never wrong." You don't know who wrote it, but you're starting to understand that in this world, where life is wrapped in cloth and gods are sealed in stone, boundaries like love and corpses are too late to keep intact. You pass that chamber sometimes, bowing your head, not out of reverence, but because you don't want to disturb them. You don't know what to call it. A forbidden love, madness, or an open bond between the living and the sealed by ritual. Only that sometimes, amid the chants, you hear a soft laugh from that chamber, a feminine, moist sound, like resin's scent, and no one in camp dares ask, who's happy in there? Because here, if love is taboo, a heart that waits is what drives you mad. And sometimes, madness is the only way to be loved in the darkness of a world, with no room for the truly living. There's a sound that doesn't come from ears, but from bones, a noise not heard but felt, silent, seeping, trembling through your chest, like a sigh from the heart of stone. You first felt it while wiping a wall in the 6th ritual chamber, used to offer dried lotus, pomegranate wine, and fragrant powder to a high priest's mummy, dead 8 pharaohs ago. The wall was smooth, carved with prayers to Anubis, soul escorts, marred scales, a heart beside a white feather. You'd cleaned dozens like it, no issue. But this time, as your cloth touched the stone, it vibrated, not strongly, not clearly, but a real tremor, spreading through your fingers, wrist, and spine. You stopped, telling yourself you were tired, or the stone was loose. Then you heard it, not speech, a low, drawn-out hum, like a groan from someone trying not to groan, like suppressed suffering, trapped in stone. You stepped back, looking around. No one, just you in the room, oil lamp flickering, no breeze, silence thick as linen, over a corpse's face. You pressed your ear to the wall, and heard it clearer, bursts of sound like gasping breaths, mixed with faint cracks, like stone splitting millimeter by millimeter from within. You didn't know what to do. Menka once said, if a wall breathes, don't ask why, ask, is it hungry today? You'd laughed then. But now, the wall before you didn't just groan, it seemed ready to swallow someone. You tried to leave, but the lamp snuffed out, abruptly, as if flicked by a finger. The room plunged into darkness.
And you felt heat.
No, dampness, breathing from the wall, a real breath, not imagined. You backed away in the dark, hands trembling, bumping the ritual table, spilling an incense bowl. Something struck your chest, like a warning. You didn't wait. You lit a torch, ran from the room, but the strangest part wasn't the groan. It was returning the next morning, in clear light, and finding the wall no longer smooth. Where you'd wiped, tiny cracks appeared, linking into a strange shape, not hieroglyphs, not symbols, but fingerprints. Hundreds of small prints pressed deep into the stone, as if someone inside tried to mark their existence. You called others to see. They looked, nodded, left. One said, probably a patched over spot, maybe an old passage. Another said, Could be a sealed chamber, but you knew better, because at night, the groaning returned, never the same, sometimes fast, like choked speech, sometimes slow, like a lullaby for a sacrifice. You started counting the groans. There was a pattern, 4 each night, always 4, and each time you heard them, you dreamed of being held against that wall, pulled into a crack, your skin scraped off like fish flesh under Seth's claws. One night, you woke with bleeding hands, your 10 fingers coated in lime dust, and stone fragments under your nails. You don't recall going anywhere. No one saw you leave. But that day in the ritual chamber, the wall had a new crack, sharp-edged, and among the fingerprints, one larger, your hand size, clear and reversed. Menka saw, only sighed. That wall was once a mouth. You asked, what mouth? He didn't answer, just handed you a salt packet and said, if it calls your name, don't answer. Pretend you don't hear, or find someone to answer for you. You didn't know if it was a warning or strange comfort. But tonight, as you write a small journal entry on papyrus hidden under your mat, you hear it again, the 5th time. Yes, tonight's the first night the groan came 5 times, not 4, and you understand. The wall no longer groans from pain. It's hungry, and you have been chosen to hear. And, who knows, next time you press your ear to it, you might not be the one outside anymore, because here, even stone remembers. And when it groans, it's not its voice. It's the voice of everyone swallowed before they could scream. In a hidden corner of the area, reserved for the highest royalty, where no laborer enters without 7 hot seasons service, there's a chamber of god statues, a small shrine sealed with red cloth barriers and golden seals from the last pharaoh. They call it the Bright Eyes Chamber, not for light, but for a black ebony Horus statue with lapis lazuli eyes and gold pupils that never close. Your task that day seemed simple. Wipe the golden dust from the shrine's floor and walls, a fine dust like ash but shimmering under lamplight, thin as a sacrifice's final breath. You were told not to touch the statue, not to look in its eyes, and not to let a single dust grain leave the shrine, as they believe each grain is a fragment of a soul offered to the god. You nodded, as always, brought in your oil lamp, knelt, and began. But minutes in, you noticed the lamp flickering, not from wind, as the air here never stirs, but as if the light was being pulled, bent by something invisible. You looked up, instinctively, against the rules, and your eyes met the statue's. Those eyes looked at you. Not the way statues look, truly looked. The pupils contracted slightly, the lapis blue flashing as the lamp tilted, and for a fleeting second, you felt it. You were no longer the cleaner in this room. You were the judged, weighed by every thread of thought, every dust grain on your nails, every curse you muttered, carrying rotting organs to the pit. The lamp flared, then died. You fell into total darkness, but those eyes stayed bright, like mirrors buried in divine flesh, reflecting everything you never dared face. The time you stole an amulet from a mummy and sold it, the time you left a young worker choking on smoke in a pit, fearing the curse from the next chamber, the time you heard a night call, but pretended not to, avoiding a check. The statue didn't move, but its gaze burrowed into your memory, dragging out every fault and plastering it on your mind's walls like arsenic mortar. You trembled, relit the lamp. The flame rose, not gold, but green, green like a cat's eyes, green like the stone in the statue's sockets. The light spread, illuminating the golden dust on the floor, and you saw footprints, not yours, no turning marks, just steps straight to the shrine's center, then gone. You bent, tried wiping them, but they didn't fade. You sprinkled salt, it reacted like acid on blood. The dust smoked. You breathed hard, heart pounding like a funeral drum. Then, from the darkness, you heard tapping, like a chisel on stone, steady, unhurried. You turned, no one. But Horace's eyes stayed open, bright, watching. Then, in the stifling silence, you heard a voice, not from a mouth, but in your head, echoing like a tomb's reverberation. I still see. You dropped the lamp. The fire died. Darkness swallowed you like a god's mouth. But the eyes stayed open. You crawled out, hands scraped, feet tripping on the stone threshold. When you reached the outer corridor, the hallway's lamplight didn't touch you. You were wrapped in a colder, deeper shadow. Menka ran up, saw you. His eyes changed. He didn't ask, just grabbed your hand, whispered, "It chose you." You didn't understand. You didn't want to. But since then, every lamp you light glows faintly green. Everywhere you go, golden dust trails behind you, though you carry nothing. And Horus's eyes, you feel them in sleep, in dreams, in the well's water where you see your face, always open, always waiting. Now, you clean as before, but not to clean, to see yourself again, because you know every dust grain you touch might be a message from the other side. And some gods don't need to speak, they only need to look. And when they open their eyes, the world inside you never closes again. No one wants to pitch a tent near the royal tomb's entrance, but sometimes choice isn't yours. The bed in the small western stone chamber collapsed from rat-gnawed supports. Your old tent burned slowly when an oil lamp fell onto resin-soaked linen. So you, unlucky, with no one to back you, were moved to the empty tent right at the stone's edge, where reaching through the canvas could touch the stairs descending underground. By day, it's a cool spot. Wind slips through mountain cracks. Shade falls like Isis's protective hand. But at night, the air changes, not just from cold, because the things living in that darkness start listening. The first night, you didn't sleep, couldn't. The sand under your back wouldn't settle. It shifted, crackled, like something crawling beneath. No wind, but the tent's edge flapped, as if pulled by an outside hand. Every few minutes, you heard footsteps, not normal steps, but dragging, light, wet, inching along. You sat up, grabbed the lamp, but saw nothing, just sand and shadows, and a coldness slithering near your feet. The second night, you started dreaming, not vivid dreams with images or sounds, sensations, like being pressed into a box, too tight to breathe. Someone chanted prayers in your ear, an ancient tongue no longer used, each word cutting into your flesh like a thin blade. You woke with both ears bleeding. Menka looked at you the next morning, didn't ask, just said, "Don't try to sleep if it doesn't want you to." You asked who it was. He didn't answer. The third night, you didn't dare close your eyes. You sat, knees drawn up, staring at the tent's shadows, but you dozed. And when you woke, you were lying at the pit's mouth, chin inches from the stone edge. Someone, or something, had dragged you from the tent. No one saw, no one heard, but drag marks remained in the sand. 2 long lines, like footprints without feet. The fourth night, you tied yourself with cloth ropes, wrapped around your waist, ankles, tied to the tent peg. But when you opened your eyes, the ropes were undone, not cut, not torn, loosened like someone knew your knots. You shook, you cried, you prayed, you sprinkled salt around the tent, placed amulets, wrote your name on stone, useless. The fifth night, you didn't dream. You stayed awake, but at dawn, stepping from the tent, everyone in camp stared oddly. One whispered, "I saw you circling the tomb at 3, laughing." Another said, "You spoke in a woman's voice, old and broken. You don't remember. You have no memory." But around your neck, an old linen band, stiff, dry, resin-soaked, tied lightly, like someone had begun to embalm you. The sixth night, you didn't pitch the tent. You lay in the open camp, among people, among breathing. But it didn't help. Every time you closed your eyes, you heard the call, not loud, not far, whispering at your ear, "Come back." And something in you stirred, not fear, but recognition. The voice, familiar, like your own. The seventh night, you didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't speak. You sat curled like a stone statue, eyes open, seeing no one. They said you'd lost your mind. Menka said, "No, it's becoming normal in the tomb's eyes." You didn't understand. No one did. But that night, you took a lamp and descended the tomb stairs alone. They watched but didn't stop you. The next morning, you returned, silent, unscratched, dustless. But your eyes weren't your old eyes, no longer afraid, no longer confused, but deep, bright, and knowing too much. You said you slept well, and since then, you no longer tremble near the tomb's entrance, because you understood, sleeping near the tomb doesn't drive you mad. It only makes you see what's always been below. And when you see enough, you stop fearing, you stop asking, you stop being yourself. You belong. The order came at noon, when the sun lashed like a fiery whip across the necks of everyone in the camp, and bronze-armored soldiers from the palace arrived with a golden thread scroll and a new seal. The pharaoh, dead barely 2 weeks, had been replaced. The new one, a young man, unwed, without victories, but with a mother who was a high priestess. took the throne in the fastest way power could buy, by erasing everything of his predecessor. And so you, a nameless carver, with no title, or right to refuse, were summoned to perform the most taboo task, recarve the new pharaoh's name onto the coffin of the dead. You were led to burial chamber 4, where a massive serpentine stone coffin lay in the room's center, like a half-open jaw, its lid lifted, 4 corners bound with red ropes, not for safety, but to warn that anyone entering without permission could be dragged away by the enraged soul of the renamed. You approached, oil lamp in hand, your worn bronze carving tools in tow. On the coffin lid was a full inscription: "He is the first light, chosen by Ra, extender of Maat's arm, Pharaoh Nebuchadnezzar." A long sacred name, carved by master hands, consecrated over 40 times since his burial. Now, you had to chisel it away, not cover it, not blur it, but erase it, every symbol, every curve, and replace it with another's name. The soldier handed you a paper with the new name, Pharaoh Setnakad, chosen in the dream. You didn't know him. You weren't allowed to ask. But as you placed the chisel on the stone, your body turned ice cold, as if a hand had grazed your neck. Though you were deep underground where no breeze ever reached, you began carving. Each strike on the old name felt like pounding into breathing bones. The sound was dry, but its echo sobbed. You didn't look around. You didn't stop. But you knew something moved beneath the stone floor, like bare feet circling you, light as drifting sand, steady and enclosed. You breathed heavily, sweat soaking your back, and when you chiseled the final symbol of the old name, Hamset, meaning first breath, your blade snapped in two, not from force, as if the stone refused further touch. You switched blades, began carving the new name. Your hands shook, not from fatigue, but because you knew you weren't just altering a name. You were strangling a soul. You were making someone once remembered cease to exist. As you finished the last letter, Keeper, symbol of transformation, rebirth, the oil lamp snuffed out. No reason, no wind, no movement, just out. And in that darkness, you heard a hiss, not from outside, from inside the coffin, faint but long, cool wet, like someone gasping for air after being buried. You hurriedly relit the lamp. When light returned, you saw on the coffin lid, where you'd just carved the new name, blood, fresh, trickling in a thin line. You touched it, warm, sticky, no cuts on you, no animal carcasses in the room, just blood flowing from the center of the letter. Set. You wiped it, wiped fast, packed your tools, left without looking back. At the camp the soldier was waiting. He looked at you, asked, "Done?" You nodded. He nodded back, handed you a small cloth bag. Inside, a string of ceramic beads and a golden scarab. "For dream protection," he said. But that night, you didn't sleep. Couldn't, because every time you closed your eyes, you dreamed you were in the coffin, and someone was tapping from outside, carving your name on the stone lid, not to honor, but to erase. When you woke, you ran to the carving chamber, peeked at the coffin through the door's gap, and you saw your name, etched small in the bottom corner, in shaky covert strokes, not by your hand, but in the style of your blade. And you understood when you erase a name, the cost isn't memory, it's replacement. And in the tomb's deep silence, you'd unknowingly carved your name into a place no one should occupy. His name was Jehuti Mose, but everyone in the camp called him Mose, a quiet man, tall, with sunken eyes that seemed to see things no one else did. He had a simple job carrying water and dusting auxiliary shrine chambers, where small god statues and old offerings sat, places too unremarkable to fear, but not harmless enough to forget. Mose often volunteered for night shifts, saying, "Nights are quieter, no one gives petty tasks," but everyone knew the real reason: he couldn't sleep. Tent mates said every time he closed his eyes, minutes later, he'd jolt awake, drenched in sweat, muttering names no one recognized. Once you heard him whisper, "Don't let them know I'm still breathing." You didn't ask. No one did. Until that night, when he was assigned alone to clean chamber 17, a small room deep in the western corridor, once used to store statues with broken arms or scratched faces, statues unfit for altars, but too sacred to destroy. Menka had warned, if you hear something behind you, don't turn. If you see something in the bronze mirror, wipe it like you didn't, and lock the door after entering. Mose nodded, took his oil lamp and cloth bag, and went. That was the last time he was seen whole. The next morning, Chamber 17's door was wide open. The lamp lay shattered, oil soaked into the sand, dried like blood. The cloth bag was there, the cleaning rag dropped by a stone table, no signs of a struggle, nothing stolen, but Mose was gone. Everyone rushed to search, auxiliary chambers, altars, even lifting lighter stone statues for hidden hollows. Nothing, no blood, no cries for help, no drag marks, just one tooth, fallen in the room's center, beside a headless Thoth statue, the monkey god broken long ago. The tooth was fresh, its root still clinging to dried flesh. Someone even said it felt warm. Then something strange happened. As Menka bent to pick up the tooth, he froze, face paling. He said nothing, just placed the tooth in Moses' cloth bag, tied it, and set it neatly on the ritual tent's altar. From now on, no one cleans Chamber 17, he said. It cleans itself. No one argued. No one entered that room since, but people began hearing sounds. Every night, at the third watch, from the corridor to Chamber 17, came slow dragging footsteps, not rushed, not heavy, but steady like a blood clock ticking. Once, a guard tried to check. As he neared the door, he collapsed. When he woke, his eyes were milky, hands clenched until they bled. He never spoke human words again. From then, every evening, he sat alone in the camp's corner, drawing a symbol in the sand, a lone tooth under a moon. You don't know what to believe, but you dreamed once, saw yourself in Chamber 17, alone, wiping a broken-faced statue. Behind you, breath on your neck. You didn't turn, but you knew it was Mose, or what remained of him. His lower jaw dangled, missing one tooth, and he whispered, faintly, just one part to stay. You woke, finding bloodstains under your mat. Not much, just enough to remind. Since then, passing Chamber 17, you hear faint biting sounds, like someone chewing an undigested thought. You avoid that path. You don't say Moses' name. No one does. But the cloth bag remains in the ritual tent, incensed weekly, like a neat grave for someone no longer whole. And sometimes, when night winds pass, you hear a raspy voice in the breeze. I still finished cleaning, just didn't return. And you know, in this place, sometimes one tooth is enough for part of a person to stay, not to haunt, but to keep working. In the dark, with broken statues, and no one dares take their shift. You didn't notice at first. That morning was like any other. You woke to the shift bell, the tired bickering of water carriers, and the smell of old sweat rising from the damp straw mat. You rubbed your eyes, pulled your tool bag from under the bed, slung it over your shoulder, and headed to the 9th ritual chamber, where a chipped-nosed god statue needed cleaning. The sun wasn't up, light flickering through stone cracks, and your bag felt heavier than usual, but you thought it was just the damp cloth from last night. Not until you reached the chamber, set the bag down, and opened it to grab a rag, did you see it. An arm, not cloth, not a statue. A human arm, shriveled, bound in thin rope, skin ashen and rigid, as if frozen in a kneeling pose. Its fingertips curled inward, like grasping something. You didn't scream, not from courage. Your brain couldn't process the absurdity. You stared, throat dry. The arm had no blood, no clear cut, but you knew, deep in your bones, it wasn't fully dead. It wasn't severed to discard, but to hide. And someone or something had placed it in your bag. You didn't touch it. But your eyes locked on the wrist, where a rusted brass amulet, etched with an unfamiliar symbol from no known ritual, sat, an eye pierced by a lotus stem. You turned, ran from the room, found Menka, told him. He didn't look at you, just asked, has it clenched yet? You froze, looked back at the bag. When you'd fled, the hand was curled. When you returned, slowly, lightly, the hand was open. Fingers extended, palm revealing a small object, a rolled linen strip, damp, sticky, and when you unrolled it, a faint inscription, return it before the sun peaks. You didn't understand, but you knew this wasn't yours to keep. You took the arm to the central ritual area, to the sacred fire altar, intending to burn it. The flame wouldn't catch. You tried burying it in sand. A dust whirlwind spun back. You tried throwing it into a well. The water turned incense heavy, dead fish surfacing instantly. You couldn't discard it. The arm seemed to know. It returned. Each time you left it, back at camp, your bag gained more cloth dust. then rope strands, then a finger, not the whole arm, but enough to know it was coming back, piece by piece. Someone said to bury it in the heart chamber, where souls are weighed. Another said to place it on an unfinished mummy's chest to mislead. Menka just gave you a dull knife and said, if it chose you, you must choose back, cut blood, trade. You did. That night, you sliced a small cut on your finger, dripped blood onto the arm's palm, dry, cold, but when your blood touched, its fingers twitched, like reflex, like remembering how to be human. You didn't sleep. The next morning, the arm was gone, not in the bag, the camp, or the altar, but on your wrist, once unscarred, a new mark appeared, a spiral, identical to the arm's rusted brass ring. Since then, your hand doesn't feel fully yours. Sometimes, half dreaming, it draws symbols in the sand. Sometimes, cleaning a statue, it grips so hard the brush handle snaps, unnoticed. And some nights, you touch your neck, fingers cold, foreign, and realize it's someone else's touch, not to kill you, to borrow you, because an arm was in your bag, and now it's found a new body to live again. No one said it in training, no line in the ritual handbook, or stone carvings in the embalming chamber. But every veteran in the camp knows a mummy must be dry, absolutely dry, like sand under the 10th sun, like flesh without blood, like a god without a heart. Because if it's wet, even slightly, what's inside the wrappings won't stay still. You learned this, not through stories, but the first time you were assigned to check old mummies during a storage chamber rotation, after a rare 3-day rain. The storage area's roof leaked, water seeped through cracks, and you with 2 others were tasked to dry, rewrap, and inventory them. You entered Chamber 8. 6 mummies lay on stone tables, surrounded by softly burning oil lamps, the smell of resin mixing with mold, a scent never present in any ritual chamber before. One mummy, code 215, had a black stain at its feet, where water had soaked to the 3rd layer of cloth. You unwrapped it to check. Beneath the 4th bandage was skin, not dry, soft, drenched, elastic. You touched it, not by choice, but urged, and the skin was warm, like it still held life. You stepped back, the room seemed to shrink, the air heavy like breathing through oil-soaked cloth. Then you heard it, faint, but clear, a hiss, from inside the mummy. Your teammate said, don't touch again, back off. If water's inside, it's not a mummy anymore. You asked, what is it, Tos? He didn't answer, just looked up, face pale. You followed his gaze. The mummy's hand was curling, slowly, carefully, like testing its joints. You screamed, backed toward the door, but the door slammed shut. No one outside, no one pulled, it just closed. All 3 of you were trapped. The lamps began extinguishing. 1, 2, 3. You heard rustling, like cloth dragging on stone, but not from you, not from anyone else. From the 6 mummies, one of your group yelled, lunged, pounded the door. You didn't see clearly, only heard metal fall, then hands clawing stone. You turned, saw mummy 215 sitting up, not straight, not fast, but like a body remembering an unfinished task. It didn't look at you, but its head turned toward you. You saw no eyes, but you felt the gaze, cold, heavy, knowing who you were. Your hands froze. Your feet wouldn't move. You tried praying, but couldn't recall a word. Then someone shouted, dry it, fire, lamp. You shakily relit an oil lamp. The flame flared, and you pressed it to the cloth at the mummy's feet. The wrappings burned, smoke rose, resin boiling like scalded skin. The mummy twitched, then collapsed. The room shook slightly. The door sprang open. No one asked why. No one blamed anyone. Just you, curled up that night. The burn on your hand less painful than the image of that hand curling, like a greeting, a call. The next morning, you checked. Mummy 215 was gone. No one admitted, moving it. But on the stone table, where it lay, was a dent, like a heavy body pressed into wet sand, and the burned cloth wasn't ash. Black, but intact. In a fold of charred linen, you found a piece of human skin, not dry, still soft, still breathing. Since then, whenever it rains, even a few drops through stone cracks, everyone in the camp silently prays, not for the rain to stop, but for water not to touch the mummies, because they know mummies only stay still when dry. When water touches them, It doesn't just revive flesh, it unlocks something inside, something that never died, and when it wakes, it doesn't seek its name, it seeks the one who woke it, and you, who held the lamp, unwrapped the cloth, let water seep deepest, are its final call, and that mummy, from now on, will never lie still again. Ever. At first, you thought you hadn't cleaned well enough. It's a professional reflex. When the oil lamp's light swept the stone and revealed faint lines, you assumed it was leftover dust, oil smudges, or a prior carver's fingerprints. So you returned, dipped a wet cloth in acacia ash, and wiped again, along the wind's direction, until the stone gleamed like embalmed skin. You stepped back, checked, satisfied, but seconds later, as the lamp's flame flickered from someone's footsteps passing the corridor, you looked again, and the writing was there, clear, fresh, still wet, its edges dark, as if drawn with a thick liquid, not ink, not resin. You froze. The text was short, 7 hieroglyphs, a bleeding eye, a scarab crawling backward, and 3 symbols meaning the false hand of the god. You'd never seen this combination in any ritual text. You looked around, no one in the room, the door still shut, lamp still burning, and this wall was the one you'd cleaned less than a minute ago. You touched the eye symbol lightly. Your fingertip came away wet. You smelled it. Metallic. Blood. Real blood. Your hand shook. You stepped back, wiped the text. The smudge vanished. You left, breathing hard, forehead slick with sweat. You told Menka. He didn't look at you, just asked, was it written, with the left or right hand? You froze. Left, you said. The strokes slant right. He nodded. Then it's not it yet. He didn't explain. That night, you stayed awake, and when you returned to the room the next day, part curiosity, part because your shift demanded it, you saw different writing, longer this time, stretching from the wall's left corner to the altar's edge, uneven symbols, some bold, some faint, as if written under stress or jerked. It roughly read, your hand, which wiped sacred dust, now writes its name on the list of the judged. You didn't know what list meant, but you knew, reading to the end, your heart chilled with each symbol, because at the line's end was a carved figure, not a stylized hieroglyph, but a shape eerily like you, slightly hunched, holding a cloth, 1 foot off balance. You backed out. This time, you begged to switch shifts. The guard nodded, but warned, even if you switch, the writing follows. You didn't believe, until you cleaned another room, the southern ritual chamber, for procession receptions. After wiping its wall, you turned, took 3 steps, then felt a chill on your neck. You looked back, on the wall, new writing. This time, no place is clean if your hand has touched it. You screamed. No one answered. You were being watched, not by people, by the walls. Every room you cleaned, storage chambers, even the back kitchen, spawned writing. Always after you wiped, always in blood-scented liquid, always left-handed, always about you. Menka saw you wasting away. He gave you a bundle of ash, mixed with bone powder. Sprinkle it on your cloth, he said. If the writing still appears, it's not the wall writing, it's your hand remembering. You didn't believe. But one day, you didn't use a cloth. You wiped with your bare hand, and when you left, within 3 minutes, writing appeared, and you recognized the strokes, clearly, because they were yours. The symbols you'd drawn as a child, copying your writing teacher in secret. You knelt, heart racing. The wall before you was no longer stone. It was a mirror, and you understood. Each wipe erased something, never written, but always there. By touching, you reopened memories not yours. The writing wasn't on stone. It came from the blood in your fingers, and the wall only reflected. You stopped cleaning, begged to leave the cleaning crew. But since then, your hand was always sticky. Blood, ink, or red dust. You couldn't tell. And every time you brushed a wall, even by accident, the writing reappeared, no longer in blood, in faint light. And it always began with the same phrase, he who wipes what must not be wiped, must now live with what was buried. The lampkeeper's name was Panifer, small-framed, squinting eyes, like he was always smiling, though no one ever saw him truly smile. His job was simple but unwanted, carrying oil lamps through the tomb chambers each evening, checking, refilling oil, replacing wicks if needed. ensuring the ritual flames never died. It wasn't just ceremony, it was a vow to keep the pharaoh's souls lit in the eternal earth. They believed if the fire died, darkness would invite nameless things. But one night, for no clear reason, he began complaining that the lamps reacted. React how? You asked. They breathe, he said. The flames pulse not with wind, but with my heartbeat. You laughed, thinking he was tired. But by the third night, he started smearing bone ash on his hands before touching the lamps. So the fire doesn't know I'm alive, he said. You didn't ask more, but you saw him change. His eyes no longer squinted, but were wide, red, veins cracked like they'd burst. He didn't sleep. Each morning, he sat curled in the tent's corner. Any nattering nonsense! Hands always wrapped around an oil-soaked linen strip, meant for gods, not men. Then it happened. One night, while checking the final lamp in the Sobek statue chamber, the crocodile god standing upright, jagged teeth, lapis-encrusted eyes, someone heard a scream. Not long, not struggling, short, sharp, cut off like someone swallowed whole in one breath. When guards and Menka arrived, they found him, Panifer, crumpled on the stone floor, hands clawed, mouth gaping like he'd tried to vomit something. His skin was scorched, not by flames, but in streaks, neck, arms, chest, like fiery fingers, traced unreadable prayers on him. No spilled lamp, no burned wick, but the burns formed a clear handprint from shoulder to waist, like the blessing pose in the mummy's mouth-opening ritual. He didn't die, but he never spoke again, and strangest of all, after that night, whenever someone checked the Sobek chamber, the lamp there flickered, emitting a faint charred smell like roasting meat, though no one dared confirm what. Menka said, fire in the tomb is alive. It's not lit, it's summoned, and if it sees its keeper tremble, it swallows them. You recall that every time you near a lamp, you check the flame. If it's green, you back off. If it leans left without wind, you don't refill. Once, you held a new wick. Your hand froze, but the wick smoked before touching the lamp. Since then, you wear ash gloves. No one asks. No one mocks. Because everyone knows, fire doesn't need wind to spread. It needs memory. And the lamp keeper is closest to every buried memory. Hanifer no longer works. He was moved to an outer camp, boiling water, never touching lamps. But each night, he faces the tomb, muttering, hands rubbing together, like trying to hold something once warm, once alive, once obedient, and now gone. You sometimes dream of him, standing in the tomb, holding a lamp, but not an oil lamp. A human head, hollow, mouth holding a wick, eyes smoking, and he smiles, not with lips, with flickering light in fiery pupils. You wake, oil stench on your hands, though you didn't work the lamp shift. And you know, since Panifer was burned without flames, the line between what lights and what burns is no longer clear. Everyone's a wick waiting their turn. Everyone's a shadow, briefly spared. And the fire, it remembers, it chooses. And one night, it will breathe with your heartbeat, then stop when you do, without burning, just touching. You don't know when it began, only that, after a shift cleaning the broken-footed Anubis statue in Ritual Chamber 11, your eyes started aching dully, as if sand had slipped into your corneas, though you weren't standing in the wind. At first, you thought it was an allergy to incense smoke, or a reaction to staring too long at a lamp in dim light. But then small shapes appeared in your vision, not flashes of light, but blurry human shadows standing still in unnoticed corners, behind statues, between stone columns, sometimes right behind a co-worker's shoulder, unnoticed by them. You rubbed your eyes, but they didn't vanish. Instead, they grew clearer. Tall, thin black figures, faceless, or rather, their faces wrapped in thin, near-transparent linen, like mummies before their sealing rites. You told no one, because you knew in the camp, if someone said they saw what shouldn't be seen, they'd be taken away, not outside, but deeper, to the unnumbered area, where priests wear black-painted masks, and no one sees them again. So you stayed silent, kept working, but the shadows didn't leave. They came closer. Once, while wiping a wall, brushing the last dust from a Horus symbol, you saw clearly in the bronze mirror behind you, a figure standing right behind, its hand on your shoulder, fingers half again, as long as a man's. You turned. No one. But your shoulder went cold, so cold your shirt soaked, as if dipped in a well. From then you avoided mirrors. No gazing into bronze basins. No looking at reflective surfaces. But what you saw no longer needed mirrors. It stepped out. You saw wall carvings move when no one watched. Goat-headed gods nodding slowly. Two-headed snakes slithering along their etched lines. You saw a Sobek statue, one you'd cleaned for 3 months. Blink. No one believed you, but you didn't need them to, because what you saw began revealing things never told. You saw faint carved names under red paint, names of workers who vanished without trace. You saw secret rooms, small doors cracked between massive stone slabs, where betrayed pharaohs' souls were sealed, sworn never to be named again. You started drawing what you saw, on walls, in sand, in your notebook. At night, you didn't sleep. You stared at the tent ceiling, and saw shapes forming, as if your eyes were now the tomb's own. Then you began seeing things inside people. Your tent mate. You saw a dark crack in his back, where a lingering soul curled, undeparted. You saw Menka, surrounded by a thick halo, not light, but memory. Every death he'd witnessed, every rite he'd led, clinging like golden smoke. One day, sent to clean a stone altar in Hathor's ritual chamber, you froze upon entering. The room was filled with shadows, not living people, but faint sketches in the lamplight, all turned toward you, and among them, you another version, thinner, and eyes deeper, hands bound in red thread. You stood, staring at yourself. Then that version spoke, not with a mouth, but through eyes. If you see, you must remember. You woke in your tent, unsure how you returned, but your eyes were never the same. You saw lamplight change color when someone was about to die. You saw sand beneath your feet shift when a curse was triggered. You saw walls not flat, but layered with compressed memories. You couldn't stop seeing, and you couldn't make others understand. The campmate asked, "Why do your eyes look so strange lately?" You didn't answer, because if you told, they wouldn't believe. They'd say you were tired, dreaming, needing rest, but you knew your eyes had crossed a human boundary. They were now a door to the tomb's unseen regions, and once opened, no prayer could close it, no god could block it, and you were now the witness to everything. Always, until your eyes were no longer yours, but belonged to what lay still beneath stone, looking back through you. You once thought the greatest fear was darkness, sourceless footsteps, mummies that wouldn't stay still, or God's eyes that never closed. But then you realized nothing made your skin crawl, your chest tighten, or your heart skip like the whispers at the 8th hour each night. Not early, not late, not loud, not clear, but enough to blur the line between thoughts in your head and sounds from behind your neck. At first you thought it was a dream. That day you worked the evening shift, cleaning the stone-inlaid chamber under the auxiliary tomb, once used to store organ canisters of princesses too young to wed. The room was quiet, the oil lamp steady, nothing unusual except a thin ash layer around a canister's rim, as if someone had opened and quickly resealed it. You finished wiping, stood, washed your hands with resin-soaked ash, and as you prepared to leave, you heard it a whisper at your ear, not words, but breath pressed through cloth, a crack, a rotted tongue without voice. "Do you remember?" You flinched, spun around, lamp tilting, but no one was there. Just the Anubis statue staring, and a wet footprint-like stain trailing to a wall recess. You thought you were tired, but the next night, at that same hour, the 8th watch, when the moon rose, ritual fires dimmed, and the camp lay still, it came again, this time different. You promised. No one else heard, but you felt the vibration in your eardrum, the dampness of that breath, clinging to your neck, like cold well water dripping. You asked Menka. He didn't look at you, just said, "The 8th hour is for nameless souls. They whisper because they can't scream." You didn't know what you'd promised, but the whispers repeated nightly. First a few words, then sentences, then passages, long in an ancient tongue, not from any ritual script you'd learned. But you understood, though you didn't know each word's meaning. When you heard, you knew you'd heard it before. Not here, not in this life, but in some form that knelt before a stone altar and rashly said, "I will return." Each night, you were pulled into strange dreams, eyes open, but body frozen, ears taut, like sun-dried hide, catching whispers seeping from walls, pillows, sand beneath your straw mat. Some nights, You woke to find your hand had written on your inner arm, small, slanted letters in blood. Meaningless, but repeating one phrase, the 8th hour doesn't forget. You scraped it off with a knife. It reappeared the next day. Then the whispers crept into daylight, no longer waiting for night. You bent to wipe a wall, heard, it's watching. You carried a water basin, heard, don't let the lamp die. You realized the whispers weren't just speaking to you, they commanded, reminded, tested memory. Once, you ignored them, stuffed rags in your ears, recited half-forgotten prayers. That night, no whispers came, but a scream, not loud, but resonant, like forced from a chest not yet dead. You jolted awake, the camp still slept, but you smelled burnt hair. You ran to the ritual ground, saw straw dust around the altar, scorched in a circle, a single barefoot print inside, no other marks. You told no one asked. But from then, as the 8th watch neared, you stopped resisting. You sat still, eyes open, staring into darkness, and listened to every word, every passage, like reading a transcript of your soul's forgotten vow. Some nights, you cried, unsure if from fear or memory. Some nights, you whispered back, not forced, because you were part of that voice. It was you were it. And now, at the 8th watch, you know the whispers aren't calling you. They're returning words you spoke, promised, swore in another life. And now, it's your turn to keep them. Because if you don't whisper back, that voice won't stay gentle. It will scream, it will tear, and it will rewrite your existence in the tomb, with a sound no one can forget. Since then, you wake on time, stay silent when needed, and always answer with your own breath. I still hear. You found that room, not through maps or tips, but dust, a dust unlike any in the tomb. Not incense, ash, not sand blown through cracked ceilings, but a metallic scented dust, fine enough to cling to your throat, like layered dried blood, puffing out steadily whenever you passed the eastern corridor's end, where the blueprint only marked barrier wall. No one noticed that corner, as oil lamps dimmed when nearing, like light was pulled from the wick's heart. But you lost one night, while carrying a small god statue to clean, felt a thin breeze hiss through a wall crack, blowing grey-white dust into your eyes. When you turned your lamp, you saw scratches on the stone, not natural cracks, but edges of a door once pushed. You told Menka. He went still, then flipped through a thick hand-copied stone map in a leather pouch. He traced every chamber, every ritual duct, and nodded. No door there. You pointed, then where's the dust from? He didn't answer, but after that, you were no longer assigned to the eastern corridor. They replaced you, banned you from nearing it. Yet at night, dust still came, slipping through stone gaps, clinging to your collar, weaving into your hair. One night, you coughed up something gritty, like tiny stone grains. Under lamplight, you saw faint carvings inside, like crushed hieroglyphs. You sneaked back to that corner, with a knife, lamp, and ash-dusted hands, to mask your living scent. You knelt, pressed your ear to the crack, and heard a sound, not wind, a scraping, like someone clawing stone from inside. Steady, slow, rhythmic. You pushed. The wall didn't budge, but dust fell heavier. You traced the crack, and found a handprint, faint, incomplete, but a human hand in the dust. You began wiping dust there daily, silently, and noticed, each time you wiped, a new handprint appeared. Always one hand, always the same spot, as if someone inside wiped with you. Once, you pressed your ear closer, and heard breathing, not rapid, not weak, but steady, like someone sleeping under stone. Knowing you were there, you drew your knife, used its thin blade to pry the seam. A few crumbs fell, enough for lamplight to slip in, and you saw part of a room inside. Not large, not bright, but there on the stone floor was an object. A cage, not big, but clearly a cage. And inside, you couldn't tell what, only movement, like hair fluttering, like breathing cloth. You backed away. That night, you burned with fever, eyes red, throat raw. Menka entered your tent, placed a hand on your forehead, and stared into your eyes. You saw it, he said. The room not on the map holds what must not exist. You asked, who built it? He replied, no one built it. It appears. Each generation, a new room grows. No one knows who started it, only that whoever opens it can never close it again. You didn't sleep that night, but each time you dozed, you dreamed of being in that room, alone, hand on the cage, and a whisper, "Thank you for cleaning so I could see." You woke, left hand coated in strange dust, not fine, but coarse, heavy, like ground stone, mixed with human hair. You knew no one would believe, but you returned the next day and saw the door cracked open slightly, not enough for a person, but enough to see deeper. This time, you saw something writing inside, not with hands, with hair, each strand dipped in dust, dragging symbols across the floor. You read and understood. It was a name, not yours, but someone in your tent, and when you ran back to camp, that person was gone. No drag marks, no screams, just dust on their mat, and a severed lock of hair caught in their shirt seam. You understood. That room needs no map. It finds its own, through dust, through breath, through stone's whispers, and you, the first to wipe its dust, are now its doorkeeper, unable to enter, unable to leave, because the dust knows your scent, and that room, never drawn, now lives in your eyes, your chest, and sometimes at night, you cough up tiny symbols, as if something inside is trying to write its way out. No one warned you about the smell. They only said, "The blood ritual chamber needs cleaning every weekend," handing you a resin-soaked linen cloth and a bowl of ash mixed with blue stone powder. Simple work, you thought, like dozens of other ritual chambers. Wipe dust from stone altars, check for cracks, refill lamps. But as you crossed the threshold, before your eyes adjusted to the dark, the smell hit, not blood, as the room's name suggested, nor familiar incense, but burning, specifically burning human hair, acrid thick, carrying a warm, wet pulse of life, already dead. You froze, throat catching. No hair was burning here, you thought. No large fire, no sacrificial burning for at least 2 months. But the smell stayed, as if someone had just cut hair and burned it in clumps on the stone floor you stood on. You bent down, searching. No embers, no ash, just a faint yellow stain by the altar, like fire pressed down. You started wiping, trying not to think, but the smell didn't fade. The cleaner you wiped, the stronger it grew. When you reached the room's center, where a handprint was carved into the altar, you saw a single hair, long, black, draped across the stone's edge. You touched it lightly. It crumbled like ash. But the smell deepened. You turned to leave. Each step, your sandals tapped the stone, but another sound followed. Faint, not close, but steady, like someone stepping behind. You turned. Nothing. Yet something had changed. The room wasn't as dark. Your shadow stretched backward, though the lamp was in front. You stepped back. The shadow didn't. You smelled burning hair, stronger, like it rose from your own neck. You touched your nape. Your skin was hot. Then you heard it. No clear words, a single long syllable, like a call through 3 layers of linen, choked in a throat that had screamed its last. You ran. Menka stopped you in the corridor. "Smelled it?"
he asked.
"Without needing your words. That smell is fire's promise," he said. "Fire that touched someone's hair won't fade until their name is called again."
You asked.
"Who burned?"
He stared long.
"The first one sacrificed. That room was built around them." You didn't ask more. That night, you didn't sleep. Each time you closed your eyes, you heard burning hair. Not fire's crackle, but a faint hiss like thread pulled through hot iron. You were haunted. The smell followed on your sleeves, in your water, even in your tentmate's breath. You tried washing with sacred ash, bathing in salt water, dousing with incense oil. Useless. The smell wasn't on your skin. It was deeper. It lived in your lungs. Then one day, you did the dumbest thing. Returned to the blood ritual chamber at midnight, carrying your own hair. Burned a small clump on the altar. You thought, if the smell was a call, answer it. The flame rose, not large, but its light stretched across the wall, revealing a shadow, a person, faceless, hair long, half-burned, eyeless sockets, hands clasped as if awaiting a naming rite.
You meant to run.
Your legs wouldn't move. Then the shadow spoke, not with a mouth, through smoke, curling into words. "Wipe my name on stone." You understood, unclear why, but you bent, took ash, blood from your scratched finger, and wrote, not your name, not a pharaoh's, but a forbidden ancient symbol for the first blood offered. You wrote on the altar. As you finished the last stroke, the shadow vanished. The burning hair smell faded, the room stilled. You left, your breath lighter. But since then, your hair falls out. Each morning, your comb is full. Each hand wash, the drain clogs with hair. You check the mirror, your hair remains. But what you lose is memory. You forget your tentmate's name, what your mother called you, the sound of your own cry. In exchange, you recall every sacrificial burning rite from the Third Dynasty, the smell of blood meeting fire for the first time. And you know the burning hair smell won't leave you, not because you're cursed, but because you're chosen to remember what others try to forget. And the blood ritual chamber now has found its first name writer again. You. No one in the camp sings after midnight. An unwritten rule, unrecorded, unwarned, but known to veterans. After the 12th hour, all words, all sounds, must stay in your throat, especially ancient chants, rhythmic, cadenced songs used to send souls from bodies or keep gods from leaving tombs too soon. Because after midnight, the boundary between human and non-human is so thin that one mistimed verse could awaken what should never be named again. But you, like all newcomers, didn't fully know. That night was your guard shift in the broken statue area, where statues too damaged for main altars, yet too sacred to discard, were kept. You were assigned to watch them, as reports claimed some had shifted positions or muttered among themselves when the room was empty. To stay awake, you began humming. At first, trivial lines, names, short ritual phrases. But then, somehow, you sang an ancient chant, one you'd heard Menka recite during a royal mummy's heart-placing rite. You didn't mean to. The words flowed naturally, as if they'd lived in your tongue before you learned to speak. It was a 3-beat chant, 3 notes per phrase, ending in a dry thud like stone on stone. The lyrics spoke of opening a dead heart, guiding a soul through 13 gates, and returning its true name on the other side. You sang the first verse. The air didn't change. You sang the second. The statue stayed still. But at the third, the final verse, as you uttered the last keyword, the room fell so silent your heartbeat thundered like a bronze drum. The breeze stopped. The oil lamp snuffed out. And from among the statues, unclear from where, a voice sang back. Not human, not male, not female. A sound like bones scraping, like stone dust breathing through a rotted throat, singing the harmony to your chant. You froze. Then the Sekhmet statue, half its face broken, missing right-hand claws, trembled lightly, not strong, like a breeze passing. But no breeze remained. Then other statues trembled, each pulse matching your chant's rhythm. You backed away, didn't dare breathe, but it didn't stop. From between stone cracks, altar bases, crevices never there before, sounds rose, ancient chants, broken, slow, layering like an underworld choir. A voice surged in your head. The chant rang, after the forbidden hour. The door is ajar. The name will be returned. You screamed. No sound escaped. You ran. But the stone door had shut. From the darkness, shapes formed, faceless, round forms in ritual headdresses, holding ropes of human hair. One raised a hand. Skinless, bones bound by linen. It pointed at you. Then spoke, not singing, reciting, your true name. The one only your mother knew. And when you heard it, you collapsed. Because you knew, once your true name is spoken after midnight, you no longer belong to this side of the door. That night, you don't recall what happened. When they found you the next morning, you sat among the broken statues, eyes wide, mouth sealed as if stitched from within. No one could rouse you. Menka came, placed a dried lotus on your forehead, and whispered a calming prayer. You burst into tears, not from fear, because now every chant lived in your head. Every note, every beat, every transition, and you couldn't stop singing them, even if just in breath, even in sleep. And you knew, the door was open, the voice had heard, and you were now part of that chant, unable to stop, unable to forget, unable to rest, until the next person sings at the wrong hour, and you will be their harmony. At first, you thought it was just superstition, like the many eerie tales of the tomb. Don't break an oil lamp in the southern chamber. Don't let your nails fall on the inlaid altar, and never speak your name loudly near an open coffin. But the story about cats, creatures ancient Egyptians revered, raised in temples, mummified like gods, was different. No one dared bring a cat into the main shrine, where the statue of the tomb's guardian deity stood, a half-human, half-lion figure, holding a scale and a vial of tears, not out of fear of offense, but because cats themselves refused to enter. Once, a servant brought a kitten to guard against rats in the offering store, but as it crossed the main shrine's threshold, the kitten arched, fur bristling, let out a piercing yowl, and leapt back, rolling in the sand as if its paws had touched hot coals. No one tried again, but you, curious, skeptical, believing everything had an explanation, tried once. The cat you chose wasn't a pet, but a stray that lingered around the kitchen tent, fed fish scraps and scratched behind the ears each evening. It wasn't aggressive or timid. You carried it, stepping gently toward the main shrine's door at noon, when sunlight was harshest, and the shrine's shadows retreated behind carved stone columns with God's half-open, half-closed eyes. All was quiet, until you stepped onto the threshold. The cat jolted, no cry, no struggle, but its body began trembling, uncontrollably, as if bones were detaching from flesh. Its eyes widened, pupils shrinking to pinpoints, staring into a dark point you couldn't see. Then it turned, clawed your chest until it drew blood, broke free, and bolted. You didn't chase. Couldn't. But looking down where it stood, at the threshold, you saw claw marks clear in the sand, and another mark, a cat's paw, large, long, with 6 toes, claws curved into the ground, fresh from inside. You stepped back. Then, from deep within the shrine, a sound, not loud, like claws scraping stone, not rushed, not urgent, but steady, like the patrol of something still alive. You turned and ran. That night, you told Menka. He wasn't surprised. Just asked, "Is the cat still alive?" You nodded. He nodded back. Then it didn't look straight into the eyes. You didn't ask more. But the next day, you couldn't find the cat. Me campmates said it ran into a northern crevice and vanished. You followed the trail, found the spot, and saw a tuft of fur, wet, smelling of ash and resin, the scent of the embalming chamber. But that place was never used for mummification, and blood, very little, trailed briefly, then vanished, before a stone wall carved with a crowned cat, its eyes deliberately blurred. You understood. Cats didn't avoid the shrine out of fear. They remembered what humans forgot. They, blessed with senses of the other world, still felt a presence humans were too dull to tremble at. Inside the main shrine wasn't just a statue, not just offerings, but something not meant for worship, but confinement, and the cats, somehow, still guarded the door, not to stop people from entering, but to keep what was inside from leaving. You never tried again. But since then, you saw cats everywhere around the main shrine. They didn't meow, didn't play, just sat, watched the door, guarded. One night, passing by, a cat locked eyes with you. You froze, and you knew, if you took another step, you wouldn't see what was inside. It would see you, and from then, it would remember, never forget, never spare, never leave. Like those cats, the only creatures allowed to stand before a god without bowing, because in their eyes, gods were just another species, and the main shrine, where humans knelt, was where they chose to warn, not with words, but with absolute silence. The dreams began softly, like thin sand sliding across your souls as you walked at night. At first just blurry images, a shadow kneeling by a stone altar, hands bloodied, but unwounded, then a genderless voice whispering in your ear, in a tongue you'd never learned yet. Understood instantly, beneath the stone, no one knows the name. You jolted awake, sweat soaking your collar, heart pounding like a funeral drum, but your mind blank, until you looked at your hands and saw dry stone dust on your palms, though that night you hadn't gone anywhere, touched nothing but your rotting straw mat, and the water jug by your tent. You brushed it off, thinking it was an echo of camp tales, but the second night, the figure returned in your dream, standing at the end of the corridor, to the broken statue chamber, eyes covered by scorched cloth strips, mouth closed but voice ringing in your head. You have hands to dig. You were chosen because you don't know who you buried. You woke again, this time, sand scattered on your feet, as if you'd returned from somewhere, and footprints led from your tent to the slope's edge behind the ritual ground. You followed them, not waiting for dawn, and you found it, a slight dip in the sand, between two stones forgotten as nameless, unblessed. You knelt. The sand there was softer. You dug with your hands, one layer, then two. No bones, no coffin, but a square stone slab, smooth, and as you touched it, the third night's dream hit before you could return to your tent. In it, the blindfolded figure emerged from the earth, holding a bent ritual knife, blood dripping from its fingertips, onto a floor inlaid with reversed script. I once had a name, but it was scraped away by your own hand. You woke with a small cut on your middle finger, sharp, deep, bleeding exactly where the dream knife was. From then, you dreamed nightly, and each dream, the blindfolded figure came closer, first standing far, then sitting beside you, then grasping your wrist, pulling down, always the same command: dig. By day, you didn't sleep, but your body began moving to that spot whenever no one watched. You didn't bring a shovel. You used hands, nails. Each night, a bit deeper. Each night, a layer further. No one noticed, or saw and didn't dare speak. But after the seventh night, you found the first trace, a small black stone statue, a faceless human holding a jar. The jar was sealed with strange resin. When you held it, it hissed like a final breath, trapped for 1,000 years. You didn't show anyone, you hid it. But from that day, the dreams changed. The blindfolded figure removed its cloth, and you saw your face, not a mirror, not a hallucination. You but older, eyes pupil-less, skin cracked like dry earth. That version stared in your dream, speaking without words. You dug this tomb, now you must open it again. You woke midnight, ran to the digging spot. Your mouth repeated meaningless phrases, an ancient chant you'd never learned, flowing from your tongue like a lullaby. You dug with both hands, blood mixing with sand, nails nearly torn off. Then something grazed your nails, not stone, wood.
You froze.
Stepped back. For the first time, you saw a stone coffin, unmarked, nameless, a cold, silent block under the sand, as if it never wanted to be found. But you had done it. You had dreamed it. You had opened an old vow. You knelt, placed a hand on the lid. At that moment, your heart skipped a beat. In your head, the blindfolded figure whispered, soft as hair brushing your neck, "Thank you for remembering." And from inside the coffin, you felt a touch, light, from within, not knocking, not pounding, just a hand, like you'd once done when trapped. You leapt back, gasping, but your heart wasn't afraid. It recognized. You weren't just the tomb's opener, you were once its buried, and the dream didn't call you, because you were new, but because you returned at the right time, because no one else remembered. But you were the one who brushed the first sand layer to seal this coffin, touched the hand inside, and promised, one day, I'll come back. And now, the eighth night, the promise was being kept, not to save, but to continue a ritual, never truly ended, only sleeping, waiting for the right person, the right dream, the right hands. You didn't notice right away. At first it was a vague feeling, like something slightly off each morning you left your tent. The sunlight didn't hit your face as usual. The desert wind didn't curl around your feet like always. But then you realized your shadow, which had trailed your steps since you arrived at the tomb, no longer moved in sync. That morning, washing your face in cold stone water from a bronze bowl, you leaned down and saw your reflection not leaning with you. It stood upright, staring. You flinched back, water splashed. No one was behind you. The shadow stayed, steady, unswayed by wind, clearly not mimicking your movements. You raised your left hand. The shadow lagged half a beat. You raised your right. It didn't move. You took a step. It stood still. A chill ran down your spine. You left the water area, heading to the stone carving zone, crowded, well lit, hoping to drown out what happened. But along the way, every glance at your feet showed the same. The shadow wasn't yours, no longer a reflex. It chose when to move, turned on its own, sometimes looked another way. You told Menka. He didn't ask much, just pulled you into the shade, lowered his voice and said, "Maybe your car wants to split." Ka, the soul's shadow, tied to the body, in ancient Egyptian belief, existing between life and death, fed by chants and undying fire. If your shadow stops following you, it's hungry, Menka said. It no longer sees you as its master. You didn't believe, but that night, leaving your statue cleaning shift in the southern area, under a new moon's light on the stone path, you glanced down, and saw nothing. No shadow, no shape, just you, alone. But then, turning your head, you saw your shadow, standing across the corridor, back to you, head slightly tilted, listening. You didn't dare call, didn't know what to call. Then the shadow turned, not its body, just its head, and you saw empty, pitch-black eyes, reflecting nothing, but clearly watching, as if asking, "Who are you?" From then, your shadow appeared irregularly. Some days, gone, some days, doubled, one on the right, one on the left. Some days, washing your hands, you saw two black hands in the sand, though you had one body. One afternoon, cleaning old bloodstains under Sobek's carved altar, you saw your shadow veer to another corner. You went right, it went left, then vanished into the wall. You chased, nothing, but you found a crude charcoal sketch on the stone, a human without a shadow. Below it, an ancient symbol. When Ka forgets the body, it seeks a new name. You understood. Your shadow no longer belonged to you. It was seeking someone, or something else to inhabit. That night, you wrapped your hands in prayer-inscribed linen, lay still in your tent, sleepless, but opening your eyes, you found yourself outside, by the pit you dug in your blindfolded figure dreams, and your shadow was leaning over, hand on the pit's mouth, whispering, no sound, but the sand beneath trembled. You ran back, and the next morning begged Menka for help. He gave you an old bronze mirror. A shadow only reflects what's truly in you. If it leaves, maybe what's in you isn't you anymore. From then, you carried the mirror, but looking in, you saw no face, only behind you, where your shadow should be, another shape, thinner, longer-armed, approaching. You threw the mirror away, but you knew, you were no longer whole, a body without a shadow, a shell, starved by its K, or replaced. And each night, passing carved walls, you saw your shadow glide ahead, steps before you, turning into unopened paths, like leading a ritual you don't recall vowing to join. Then one day, gazing into water after a ritual, you saw yourself, upright, complete, but as the shadow, while your body faded, like dissolving in mist. You understood, the K had chosen again, and you now were just an echo of what it once clung to. The shadow had gone, but it took your name, and now, you follow behind, no shape, no shadow, just the sound of footsteps from something once called human. You don't know who first found that room, only heard that a lamp carrier, cleaning the storage below the abandoned tombs, wandered into an unmarked chamber, with no formal entrance, no stone door, no light, or trace of anyone entering. But when he returned, face pale, eyes unfocused, repeating, "No way out, no way out," the camp knew something else had awakened. You were ordered to investigate, with two others. The path led through a side corridor behind the ritual storage. Menka gave you a small bronze mirror, not for light, but to warn. He said, "Bronze mirrors don't reflect images, they reflect memories." You didn't ask more, but crossing that room's threshold, all breath was sucked from your lungs. The air didn't move, the oil lamp didn't flicker, and the first thing you noticed, you couldn't see walls, only mirrors, bronze mirrors, hundreds, thousands, from floor to ceiling, wall to wall, each a different shape, round, square, long, warped, cracked, none alike, but all polished, hung by thin copper threads, like human hair. You tried turning to find the entrance. Gone, all was mirrors, and you weren't you. Each mirror showed a different you. In one, you wore a ritual robe, holding a knife. In another, you were old, hair white, skin wrinkled, like aged papyrus. In another, you had no eyes, just deep black sockets, weeping blood. One of your companions screamed. You turned, saw him frozen before a crescent-shaped mirror. His face in it wasn't his, smiling, but he, in reality, trembled, eyes unblinking. Then you saw the hand in his mirror, reach forward, not his hand, longer, joints misaligned, black nails, touching his cheek in the glass. He screamed, couldn't step back, and when he touched the mirror in life, his body convulsed, like struck by lightning, vanished, no sound, just the mirror, with him still inside, hand shaking, face white as lime, now part of it. You panicked, tried to run, but the room was a mirror maze, no telling real from illusion. You called the other companion, no answer. You ran, but each turn showed you, or other versions of you, one screaming, one smashing their head into glass, one standing still, all turning to look at you at once. Then you heard it, not from a mouth, from every mirror, a shattered voice, hundreds whispering as one, like waves on stone. Choose one, step in, stay. You spun, breathless. Your hand trembled. The mirror in your grip began to crack. Then, a large central mirror changed. It didn't reflect you, but a strange corridor, lit, an exit. You rushed toward it, but beside it, another mirror. Your mother, calling, reaching out, not a memory. She was watching you, and crying. You stood between two mirrors. One, an escape. The other, your mother, reaching. Then, you recalled Menka's words. Mirrors reflect memories. So, she wasn't real. She was a reminder of what you hadn't dared remember. You turned, closed your eyes, chose the lit path. When you opened them, you lay in a cold dirt corridor. The other companion was gone, but the bronze mirror was in your hand, cracked in two, and in its fracture, you still saw a face, looking out. Not you, but once you, and the mirror room. No one found it again, no door, no map. But that night, washing your face in a basin, you saw your reflection slightly off, and behind you, in the water's mirror, an extra shape, always half a step away. When you turned, it didn't. It stood, watched, and the cracked bronze mirror in your hand, at night, sometimes trembled lightly, like someone inside, tapping, softly, but enough to make you never dare look at yourself again. You can't say exactly when the voice began, only that one day, arranging small statues in an auxiliary shrine, hands trembling from a sleepless night, a sentence rang in your head, sharp as a knife, cutting papyrus. Move that statue to the left. You thought it was your thought, so you obeyed, but as you turned the statue of beds, guardian against nightmares, 3 steps, the voice spoke again. No, off by 3 beats. Center it in the light. This time, you froze. You hadn't spoken, no one was nearby, and you were certain, absolutely certain, it wasn't yours. Not an inner thought, not a memory, a command, cold, heavy, ringing from somewhere deep and familiar. From then, it didn't stop. At first, simple instructions: shift a lamp's position, wipe dust you hadn't noticed, flip a stone you thought was set. You obeyed, half afraid, half strangely calmed, because each time you followed, oddities ceased. Lamps didn't snuff out mid-rite, burnt smells vanished from the air, bloodstains on the floor disappeared overnight. You began waiting for it. Each morning, your heart raced not from nerves, but eagerness for guidance. Then it demanded more. Take ash powder from Menka's room, place a dried snake in the offering box of Mummy 318, smear resin on the back of the guard sleeping at the 3rd watch. You didn't know why, but you did it. Because if you refused, your head throbbed like someone was crushing your skull from within, and the pain only stopped when you said 3 words: I will do it. You tried telling someone, but as you opened your mouth, the voice rang. Silence. They looked at you, confused, while you, mouth open, voiceless, throat dry as sand, closed it. They didn't ask again. You grew unable to tell your thoughts from its voice. Some nights, you sat silently in the stone-carving chamber, staring at wall reliefs, gods with bulging eyes, holding knives and burning hearts, and heard the voice whisper, "You carved these images." You shook your head. No, but it continued. I know your hand, your script, the oath you swore when you wore the golden cloak. You didn't remember, but touching the carvings, your hand followed their lines without hesitation. Your wrist recalled the pressure, your skin, the roughness, and the voice, no longer commanding. It recalled, it guided. Go there, it said one night. You followed, not knowing why, not knowing where, but your feet knew the path. And when you arrived, at a door sealed with 3 stone layers, you placed your hand on it, and the door groaned, then opened. No one else saw, no one followed, but you, alone, stepped in. Inside was an empty room, only a linen sheet on the stone floor. You lifted it. Beneath was a body, not whole, not new, but wrapped in the exact style you'd dreamed. And as you leaned closer, the voice in your head whispered, nearer than ever, "You finally found me." You stepped back, didn't want to believe, but you knew. You didn't find that body. You remembered it. And the voice, no longer directing, it merged. It stayed with you always. No need to speak. You knew what it wanted, and you acted, no longer resisting. Not because you were forced, but because it was right, because your hands trembled when you didn't obey, because you slept soundly when tasks were done, and because, deep in your mind, you remembered you were part of this ritual, and that voice now was no echo. It was you, the part of you buried, sealed, split from lives ago, and now you'd let it return. No one notices you changing, but at night, you no longer sleep alone. You speak in sleep in a tongue no one taught. You write with hands uncontrolled. You stand in the ritual chamber and breathe like a priest. And when someone asks, "What are you doing?" you smile, and another voice from your throat replies, "I'm returning to myself." That final night came quietly, like a slow breath through the broken teeth of a decayed god statue. No one in the camp spoke loudly. No one dared laugh. No one dared hold another's gaze too long, because everyone knew the forbidden door would be opened at dawn, after years existing only as a red line on the map, an empty space no one could mention, a blurred brown ink note, "Never enter, even if the fire dies and the god leaves the statue." The order to open it didn't come from above. No pharaoh decreed it. No priest dared suggest it. But Menka said, "The time has come," and no one dared object, because all the signs had appeared. Oil lamps burning backward, well water turning salty, a god statue struck by lightning in a clear sky, and most crucially, you, the one every dream was guiding, had stood before the forbidden room's door each night in your visions, hearing the voice inside tap your skull. "Open it, open it, open it." That night, no guards stood watch. All retreated to their tents, pretending to sleep, but their eyes kept drifting toward the ritual chamber, expecting an earthquake or a scream. You didn't sleep. Couldn't. In your head, voices, not one, but hundreds, thousands, screamed, sang, chanted, breathed, called your name in different ways. The name your mother used, the name the priests gave at birth, the name you carved on stone in the 18th dynasty, all ringing like an underworld choir. You sat up straight, took no lamp, wore no cloak, only wrapped your hands in resin-soaked linen and sacred ash, stepped out of the tent, past the blood ritual chamber, past the mirror-filled room where you once saw yourself melt in reflections, continued through the sandy corridor where your shadow no longer followed. Each step, the sand sank deeper, not because it was soft, but because you weren't truly walking with your feet. You glided, led, as if the earth itself breathed, and guided you to where you'd once stood. The forbidden door, carved in black stone, nameless, unmarked, bearing only 3 concentric circles and a horizontal slash, like a knife cut. Menka was there, asked nothing, just handed you a red cloth, once used to blindfold the last priest of the prior generation. "Not to cover your eyes," he said, "but to bind your memory. Don't see too soon." You wrapped it around your forehead, not over your eyes, but it felt like your head was tightened. Memories you never had began leaking, like water through stone cracks. You approached the door. Everything behind you fell silent. No wind blew, no insects chirped, even the campfires didn't crackle. You raised your hand. It didn't tremble, not from courage, but because your hand, long ago, stopped being yours alone. You placed your fingers on the middle circle. The stone door creaked, didn't open. You whispered, in an unknown tongue, only knowing your tongue twisted to a syllable banned since before writing existed. The door hissed softly. A slit of strange golden light appeared, not real light, but the glow of memories never meant to exist. You peered into the slit. Inside was darkness, but deep in that darkness, you saw a hand waving, not large, not clear, but real, and you knew tonight was the last night you'd be you. Beyond that door, if you entered, everything would change, not just your soul, but your name, your history, the 1,000-year silence you'd unwittingly awakened by dreaming of the blindfolded figure. But you had no choice left, because you were the one once locked inside. Your hand had sealed that stone door in the final ritual, and now you were merely the remaining hand, returning to finish what was left undone. The final night passed, without drums, without gongs, without witnesses. Only you, the door, and the voice in your head, repeating like a heartbeat in reverse. "Open it, open it, open it." Inside wasn't as dark as you thought. No smell of old mummies, no sacred ash, no whispers echoing off stone walls, only a faint golden glow, as if lit from beneath the ground, not from fire, not from oil lamps, but from the stone floor's cracks your eyes hadn't yet seen. And in the vast room, where your footsteps echoed thrice before fading, there was only one thing, a mirror, not the tarnished bronze mirrors you'd cleaned, nor the ritual mirrors reflecting souls. This one was your height, unframed, standing on the stone floor like it grew from the earth. You approached, your heart not racing but strangely steady, as if you'd walked this path 1,000 times. And standing before the mirror, you saw no reflection, just a deep black, like a well's surface at night. You tilted your head. The mirror didn't change, but when you raised your hand, an image appeared. Not you now, but you as a child, before the tomb, before knowing any god's name, before dreaming of the blindfolded figure. Then the mirror shifted. You at 14, hands trembling as you carved your first symbol on an organ canister. It turned again. You the first night you heard whispers in your head. You the night you dug a new tomb with bloodied hands. You when your shadow left. Then, the final image was you now, but staring straight at you from inside the mirror, not reflecting, but independent. The figure in the mirror moved its head first, frowned, lips pursed, not a reflex. You stepped back. The figure didn't. It stood still, and then, it spoke, not with a mouth, through the entire room, its voice like yours but older, firmer, weary. Finally, you remember, you wanted to ask. Remember what? But before you could, the figure raised its right hand, holding something, unclear, if a knife, a stylus, or a carving tool. We've buried too many names, it said. Now it's time to carve the right one. You looked at your hand. The same object was there. You didn't know where it came from, but it felt warm, familiar, like your hand was born to hold it. The figure stepped forward, not toward you, but toward the mirror's surface. And you saw, it wasn't it. It was you, truly you, but not from now. From before you were split. Before your car was torn, before your name was erased, before the forbidden ritual. And you understood, this room held no other soul. It held the part of you taken away, locked here for lifetimes, because you once erred. You stepped closer to the mirror. Now, when you moved, the figure followed, but not exactly. Always a beat off, slightly angled, as if saying, I haven't forgiven you. The voice in your head rang, unite, or be left behind. You had no choice. You raised your hand, touched the mirror. It felt cold, like water frozen in the desert. Then the mirror dissolved like smoke. The figure stepped out. No sound, no wind, just you both standing face to face. Then no longer two. One, when you opened your eyes, the room lit up for a second like lightning. You collapsed, throat dry, hands still clutching the object. Then you looked around. No mirror, no light, just an empty, silent room. And you whole. You didn't need a mirror to know your can had returned. You felt it in your breath, your spine, your steady heartbeat, and you knew you were now complete to enter the ritual's final phase. But you also understood. The door out was gone. No one waited. No one would open it. Because this room wasn't for escape, but for remembering, for receiving, for becoming what you once were, the keeper of secrets for souls yet unnamed. And you stepped into the darkness, not seeking a path, but carrying it. Because after seeing yourself, truly, there was nowhere left to return. You don't know how long you sat in that darkness. No light, no sound, no breeze on your collar, yet strangely, you felt no fear. All panic, chill, and thirst were gone, as if everything tied to your flesh had been stripped away. You were left with one thing, memory, not clear images, but a feeling. The feeling that you'd been here before, not yesterday, not last month, but long ago, before you could read wall carvings, before you touched your first oil lamp, before you had a name in the excavation camp. Everything was a circle, and you stood at its center. You closed your eyes, but saw clearer stone corridors before excavation, doors unopened, a sealed tomb, and you, younger, quieter, waiting by a stone slab carved with, if anyone reads this, I never left. You opened your eyes. The room wasn't dark anymore. Not because of light, but because you didn't need it. Every detail appeared, as if drawn inside your eyelids. Every wall crack, every smoke stain, like shadows of those who passed. and never left. You stood, not tired, needing no directions. You walked opposite the entrance, where the wall receded into a small crevice. Inside was an unmapped auxiliary chamber. You knew this because you'd carved the map long ago. Your hand remembered each stroke, your heart the reason you hid it. Because in that chamber was a name, not of the dead, but yours, not your current name, your true name, given in your first ritual as a low priest, chosen to hold the whispers of souls without tombstones. You entered the chamber. On the floor was a square stone tablet, blank on top, but when you knelt, placed your hand in the old spot, it glowed with indefinable light, not hot, not cold, but alive. The name appeared, in a language you no longer read, but understood, and seeing it, memories flooded like a dam breaking. The night you were erased from the priest list for opposing a sacrifice. The day you volunteered to enter the forbidden room, not to hide, but to preserve something. The morning you sealed a stone coffin alone, unseen, swearing to yourself, if no one remembers, I'll be the last to. And you stayed, through generations, reborn in different bodies, but memories seeped back. Each dream, each shiver, each strange glance at an unnoticed statue. You'd been the night guard, the stone carver, the lamp keeper, and this time, the opener. Nothing was random. Every path you took, every whisper you heard, every dream you recalled, all were traces you left for yourself. You'd sworn to return when time had erased others' memories, and now when no one knew you, you had, no longer afraid, no longer seeking escape. You were the room, the call in the tomb, the hand carving names on coffin lids. And now you didn't need to move forward, you only needed to sit, wait for another life, another person to dream of you, as you dreamed of yourself. And you'd whisper through stone, ash, lamp water, as you were whispered to, because you never left. And perhaps you never would. Beneath the scorching golden sand of the desert, under eternal God-carved stones and gilded coffin paint, no sleep is truly peaceful, because none of them, pharaohs, priests, bearers of God's hearts, were buried with a tranquil mind. Each tomb is an unfulfilled vow, an interrupted ritual, a misnamed soul, a final blood-stained glance, and those unfinished things don't lie still. They slither through stone cracks into dreams, weave through lamp smoke into living ears, seep into the dust you wipe daily with bare hands, unaware you're peeling back, time like shedding an ancient undying snake's scales. The first to bury bodies here thought they built gates to eternity, but they didn't foresee that each stone they raised, each incantation carved, became chains binding the souls below. All want to be remembered, none accept being forgotten, and so they don't leave. Each time a name is erased from a wall, their voice finds a way back through another's mouth. Each time a mummy is stirred, even by a newcomer's innocent glance, another life cycle begins. A new loop starts, not from life, but from echoes no one dares answer. And you now understand. Not just because you saw yourself in the mirror, not just because you opened the forbidden room, but because you felt what no one dares name. The unrest beneath Egypt's earth isn't a curse, but a desire. A silent, relentless, blood and dust-filled desire to be seen, named, known to have existed. And when no one answers, thousand-year sleeps begin to moan, not loudly, just enough to keep tomb keepers awake, just enough to stop cats from entering the main shrine, just enough for broken-faced god statues to weep each full moon. The living don't admit it, but every tomb worker knows. Some nights, you hear calls from the earth. Sometimes, wiping an organ canister, you feel a still warm hand. Some shadows walk beside you, never in step. You didn't believe until you woke with ash-carved strangers' names in your hand. Because the dead here don't go anywhere. They lie beneath you, among you, within you. Not to harm, not to pull anyone down, but to reclaim what they lost when the tomb door closed. An identity, a memory, a chance to exist again in the world of the named. And when you open a tomb, whisper their names, gaze into a bronze mirror, you invite them in, not to possess you, to complete you. The cracks in your mind, history, soul, the voids no one knows they carry, wait for those souls to fill. And when they do, you're no longer a lone individual. You're the last of thousands who held light here. You're the sum of every unheard vow, every unfinished chant, every unopened door. And you understand why no one sleeps peacefully. Because sleeping peacefully means being forgotten. And in Egypt, forgetting is the cruelest punishment. Your name uncarved, your face unremembered, your offerings unkept. You become sand. But if someone remembers, if someone opens the forbidden room, if someone in a dream hears the whisper and obeys, you return, not in flesh, but in memory, not to live again, but to let someone know you lived. And that's enough. No one sleeps peacefully beneath Egypt's earth, not because of a curse, but because of the desperate, fierce desire of forgotten souls, silently screaming together, "Don't let me vanish again." You hear it clearly in your heart, in your hand, ash growing cold, but within you, a new light ignites. Not because you're the last, but because you've become one of them. Another voice, another pair of eyes, another waiting to be remembered. And now, you only wait until someone, someday, dreams of you and opens the door. This fictional tale of an ancient Egyptian tomb worker, from a humble stone carver to being swept into dreams, rituals, forbidden rooms, and merging with their own forgotten memory, carries a profound reminder for modern life in the United States. We can become so consumed by work, pressure, expectations, and modern rituals that we lose ourselves without realizing it. In today's American society, where people race against time, straining to meet others' standards, company, community, social media, like the story's protagonist, we easily forget our true name. The tale of a person gradually controlled by an inner voice, a shadow breaking free, and finally seeing themselves in a mirror, is a powerful metaphor for disconnection from self in modern life, especially in the US, where individual value is exalted, yet people are worn down by workloads, success expectations, and fears of being forgotten or replaced. This lesson resonates deeply. Take time to listen to your inner voice. Ask, am I still living true to myself? Don't wait until you dream of yourself lost, or must open a forbidden room in your mind to realize what you've lost. Remember, what makes you exist isn't what you do, but the true name you're slowly forgetting each day. If you find yourself searching for your true name amid the noise of modern life, subscribe to the channel to not miss strange, haunting journeys like this. Thank you for stepping through the forbidden door with me. See you in the next video, where you might be the one to hear the first whisper.